finale. Warren Ingram, Galileo Capital. How much is enough?
What do you mean, hopefully ending off with a big finale?
Well, there will be a big finale, but I'm hoping it'll be a particular big finale that goes... Otherwise, it's not a finale.
Enough is when you can cover your day-to-day lifestyle costs as opposed to being rich. So enough is possible for every single one of us.
Big statement, justify.
So the interesting thing in one of the joys of my career is I get to meet a range of people, mostly with money, and get to understand their life, how they got to where they got, and where they are today, and whether they're okay, whether they're comfortable, whether they're financially free. And one of my favorites is, the chap I met who sits on assets, forget about his house and everything, investment assets of 50 million rand. And he is not financially free. He has to work. If he doesn't work, he spends so much on a monthly basis that if he doesn't work, he's going to deplete his capital within about 12 years. So here's a man who by any standard anywhere in the world is rich. And he's not financially free. And then I've got my favorite, now a little old lady, who was retrenched from her job in operations of a printing part of the newspapers when the newspapers when they were big and popular, and all of a sudden they went more and more online, and she ran the operations of a newspaper business, and suddenly she was not like surplus to requirements. And I think at age 55, she's now age 75. And when she stopped working, I think she had a grand total of about 4.5 million rand. She's now 75, very comfortable. She lives a fabulous life because she controls her costs. So she's financially free with a tenth of what this wealthy guy's got, and he's not financially free. So that's the big step.
This concept of financially free is so interesting because you could be living the large life and you could be having the champagne parties and soirees on your rooftop deck overlooking Hyde Park or wherever it is that you might be. And you can be having the fabulous life. Yet you are on the hamster wheel in the same way as somebody who is working for a salary and just doesn't feel like they've got enough money to put away for a retirement.
And I think that's the key in this whole thing is not focusing on an asset number because to be rich requires hard work and brains and all of that, but it also requires an element of luck. And unfortunately, that's the one trick in this whole thing is that you cannot rely on luck to get you to financial freedom. But financial freedom is a different concept. So that's a case of saying, okay, hang on, I can live a relatively simple, relatively uncomplicated, relatively inexpensive life. And that's something you can control. What you spend on a monthly basis, you can control. Yes, there'll be times where life happens to you, the geyser bursts, you go through a pothole and you've got to change your wheel and your tire and your insurance isn't paying, etc., etc. But those are the unlucky parts of life that are going to happen. But they shouldn't be big issues, and you can plan around them to an extent. So the things that you can control are what you spend on running your life day to day. And the moment you keep that under control and you make it a relatively small amount on a monthly basis, you don't need a heck of a lot of capital to be able to be financially free. And I'll give you the number because I know you're waiting for it.
I'm waiting for the number.
I'm just trying to draw it out,
Please don't draw it out.
At the end.
No. I'm the only one who goes. I'll if it's good enough, I'll give you the fanfare.
Okay. So let's just say on a monthly basis, you spend 10,000 rand. So what goes into your bank account that needs to fund your lifestyle on a monthly basis, 10,000 rand a month. Then the capital that you need to be sustainable, to be financially free for that 10,000 rand a month is 2.4 million rand.
So if you need 100,000 rand a month, you need 24 million rand a month. If you need a million rand, I'm not even going to do the sum.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot. But so for people, to make it kind of simple to say, okay, so for every 10,000 rand that you spend on a monthly basis, you need 2.4 million rand. And how do we get there? So we get there by saying, okay, typically most of us will invest our retirement money or our nest egg or whatever it's called, in a kind of a balanced portfolio of investments where you've got about 2/3 in shares and property companies. You've got the balance in cash and bonds, and it's a split between local and international. You have a typical balanced portfolio over a very long period of time, and certainly not the last 5 years. And I know that's what everyone always is going to point out at the moment, but over a very long period of time, that's going to give you around about 11% a year after costs. And with that 11% a year, you can draw 5% per year from your investments, and you leave 6% of that growth back inside because that's what's going to beat inflation for you over a long period of time. And there you are. You get to your 2.4 million.
It sounds so easy?
It's simple and uncomplicated. That's why I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's easy.
Because it's a great simple theory to apply, but to put any theory into practice is that much harder, especially when you have been enjoying your income while working.
So that's really the trade-off that you need to make, and all of us need to make in a life like this is, do we want to be financially free? That's a real decision. It's a real conscious thing that you've got to go through to say, yes, that's the most important thing for me. I want to do that. I want that freedom not to get up in the morning and go and work for a boss and actually work for the banks ultimately because I've got all this debt, etc., etc. What I want to do is I want to control my life. I want to decide what it is I do with my day every day. If that's the critical decision you want to make, then the difficult part of this is not the math and the investment stuff. It's actually saying, okay, I need to control my costs. I need to cut my cloth differently and readjust life.
And for many people, that's a compromise too far because they like the trappings of visible success. And so they like to drive the car that is flashier than they need.
Yep.
They like to live in the house in the suburb that is flashier than they need. They like to tell their friends about the holidays over the bottles of wine that are more expensive than they need. And you will hear people constantly say, well, you only live once. Money's there to be spent. Money is there to give me my freedom. This is my freedom. My freedom is that I can choose to do these wonderful things. Yet they are trapped in funding that freedom. And that's not freedom.
It's not freedom. I mean, in fact, it's the most modern form of slavery we have, is that we become slaves to debt. But we work for banks eventually. That's what's going to happen in a situation like that. If you are living on debt, then it doesn't matter who your employer is, and it doesn't matter who your family are and whatever else, your life is controlled by that debt. And you just mentioned one of the banks now cutting thousands of staff.
Well, no, 1,200 staff.
Well, that's
the
thousands.
bank. No, that's 1,200, not thousands.
More than 1,000.
More than 1,000, but not 2,000.
It's a scary number.
Yeah,
and just think about someone living in a family that's going to be affected, that's living this big hairy or this big fabulous life, and in the expensive cars and the expensive houses, and suddenly that whole rug is drawn out from under them, because now they're going to be without a job within 2 or 3 months, and they're going to get a retrenchment package that, if it's extremely generous, it might be a few months worth of income. That's what, it's more than what the law will require them to do. So I'm sure that's what the banks will do, and suddenly
make everybody go quietly, and get rid of the costs and drive profitability over the longer term. But those families, and what the trouble is, in a zero growth environment, which we're practically in, you lose your job in a sector that is not hiring, and you need a plan B.
And that's the trick now.
C, D, and F, yeah.
Yeah, and we're probably onto M and M now by Plan M and Plan M. So to me, that's where the financial freedom kicks in a real way here, is what are your choices that you want to make? So do you want to impress the family next door, and do you want to impress all your friends? Great, go for it. That's a conscious decision that you're making. The fact that you spend that money on credit cards, etc., it's just understand, don't do it as a sort of subconscious thing, or where you just kind of run in this hamster wheel doing it because everyone else is doing it. There's a reason why so few people get to financial freedom. It's because they stop, they look around, and they go, hang on, this is crazy. This is
it's so much fun.
It's so much fun for a very short period of time. It's a bit like drinking too much. It might be fun for an hour or two, but the consequences last days sometimes when you get older. And Tara's smiling at me. So that's the issue here, is that we're living in an environment where we do so much that's imposed on us by social media, by our friends, what we see, what we see
the
in
Instagram life.
Yeah.
Look at my fabulous life.
And I'm missing out because I don't have that life, etc., etc. But what we don't see is someone posting on their Instagram, gee, I got retrenched and I've had to move my house. And actually now I live in a tiny apartment with, 16 of my closest friends because I've got nothing else I can do anymore. And I'm now driving my Uber because that's all I can do. And that's a trick here. So these are real decisions, I think, that we need to make. And I mean, I know 2.4 million for a lot of people will be more than they will earn in their lifetime. I understand that. But for a lot of salary earners, 2.4 million is not a heck of a lot of money to be able to build up and save, to be able to go and live on a sustainable amount of 10,000 rand a month. And that's the thing that's intriguing me in this whole conversation around money all the time is more and more people are starting to wake up to this. In America, they call it FIRE, financially independent, retire early. And people are starting to say, hang on, we've been sold this bill of goods by society. Go study hard, go and get your university degree in America. It's going to cost you a fortune here. It's still going to cost you money no matter what. And go and work hard and play the game and you'll be fine. You'll be taken care of. Well, that's not really working out anymore, is it? Now, more and more, we're living in the gig economy. We're living in places where employers are looking at you as a complete commodity, and you work for us for so long as you are useful to us. And the day you're not, we'll find a way for you to disappear, and we'll pay you as little as we possibly can. And all of a sudden, more and more people are saying, okay, it's time for me to take care of myself first. And that doesn't mean that you don't work and you don't contribute to society. What it means is take some real financial decisions and
take financial decisions when you are able to. Take financial decisions before the decision is imposed upon you, before you get into an ESCOM type situation where you have no room to move, where you have to make some ferocious and brutal decisions that could affect your children's schooling, which is the most terrifying thing of all. It could affect where you live, and beyond just how you live, it suddenly affects multiple aspects of your life and the lives of others around you.
And I think that, a lot of people tend to avoid this conversation, even internally as a family, between spouses, where they just say, well, we'll discuss that next time, or we need to have a hard conversation one day. And then they only have the hard conversation when reality is smacking them in the face. And that's the point. Rather take some uncomfortable decisions now where you've still got choices, as opposed to one day when you're sitting in a situation where the choices have been made for you.
It's time for that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a bit late.
Far too late. And I think that's the issue now, is we're in a difficult economic environment where
it's such a good time to have hard conversations.
Yeah. And you were saying, people are kind of getting grumpy because there's so much going wrong at the moment. And there's so many things that are difficult. And then, how is it that people like me can be somewhat optimistic? And that's really my point here is, the moment you start to take some control and start imposing your will on your life, it's amazing how suddenly things aren't so bad anymore. And that's the point in a situation like this, is stop being the passenger, just running on the hamster wheel and waiting for everyone to do things for you and spending, as if there's no tomorrow, because sometimes tomorrow is not as much fun as you think it is.
Let's tell the story. There's a fabulous sign. I don't know if it's still there, but there is a particular food market, and it's got some particularly dingy gentlemen's facilities. And above one of those facilities, above the urinal, there's a sign that says something along the lines of "Smile. These are the good times that you're going to look back on one day." And it's like such a good perspective. It really is, because so often you don't appreciate that you're in a really good time in human history. You're in a really good time. You're earning. You're doing all of these things. Appreciate what you've got now, but plan for those 20 years from now when you look back and you go, oh, weren't those the good old days?
If only.
If only. We had such a good time. Remember when? And you can still have some great memories. I mean, the Julia story is testament to that.
I was resisting bringing up because she is such an example for all of us. I mean, I think she's on, country 87 or something that she's visited, and living a good life now with babies and all the stuff we've all got, the education costs and the home and all that stuff. But she took control so early on in life that for now, this is just not such a big issue for her. These economic conditions that we're all complaining about, for her, she's okay.
Less of an issue. Warren Ingram, Galileo Capital. How much is enough? That is how much is enough. The podcast will be up on our website. Will be up on our podcast feeds in the next half hour or so. Share it with your friends. If you really care about your friends, share it with them. Help them. Help them to help you. You help them.